Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on QGIS, Just the Basics. I am your moderator today. My name is Sarah Thompson. I'm a GIS manager at the Arizona Department of Transportation, and I will be introducing your three speakers today. We're joined by Randy Hale. He is the founder of North River Geographic Systems Incorporated, and he has worked for the federal government for 16 years and then started consulting. He has spent about the last 10 years working with open source tools like QGIS, GRASS, PostgreSQL, SQL, and more. We are also joined by Stacy Curry Johnson, PhD. She is the Geospatial Librarian and GIS lecturer at Vanderbilt University, where she serves as a geospatial consultant to researchers, faculty, and students. And at Vanderbilt, Stacy has worked on projects such as the Battle of Nashville Mapping Project and the creation of the first South Asian Historical Digital Atlas. And lastly, we are joined by Natalie N. Robbins. She is a research analyst funded through the Vanderbilt Initiative for Interdisciplinary Geospatial Research, and she is particularly interested in the development of novel informatic techniques to analyze spatial data and interpret environmental phenomena. And that is it. With that, thank you to our speakers. I will pass it to Stacy to begin sharing her screen. And Stacy, sorry, while you pull that up, thank you again to our audience. If you have any questions as they go along, please put that into the Q&A and I'll be looking out for that. And then we'll have about 15 minutes at the end for questions.
Okay, let me share my screen. And here we go. All right, welcome to QGIS, Just the Basics. Again, this is us, the three of us, Randy, Natalie, and myself. And a little bit more about us, but you've already heard a good bit, so we're just going to keep moving on. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to give you an overview. What is QGIS? Why use QGIS? Some key features. My favorite part, cool tricks and tips that you can do with QGIS. And then we'll talk about how you get started. How do you get the program? How do you get your hands dirty with QGIS? Then we have a wonderful demo, and then we'll open it up from Q&A. So what are we talking about today? Well, QGIS was started in 2002 as a viewer for a PostGIS, and it's 2006 version 1.2013 or 213 version, the next version, then version 3. With QGIS, you may copy, distribute, and modify the software as long as you track the changes and dates in the source files. And we'll get into like how that's beneficial in a little bit. And it can be used for commercial purposes. This is just not for educational purposes. We can use it for anything. And QGIS is a nonprofit entity that resides in Switzerland and has a very active board, voting members, and yearly budget. So it does have structure to the process. So why would you choose to use this software? Well, we all are familiar with other software packages that are great for doing geospatial analysis of all kinds. This one is very robust. It's very cost effective because it's free. You don't have to pay anything, and it is fantastically compatible with any of your geospatial analysis or research needs. It has a great community support. So if you have a question, usually you can find somebody that has a support that can answer that question immediately. It's great support system. It also has great cross-platform compatibility. This is key, especially if you work in a, for example, here at Vanderbilt, we have a lot of students that have Mac computers, and that's not always the most compatible platform for using different types of software. QGIS, you can actually use this in a cross-platform, all systems and all operating platforms. You can also customize and then make things extendable. So you can do all sorts of customization within QGIS to make your analysis happen the way that you want to see it happen. We'll talk more about that later. So some key features to look out for. It does have a user-friendly interface. Just like any other software package that you go to open or use, it takes a minute to find your lay of the land, but once you do, it makes sense, okay? And it supports a wide array of geospatial formats, your typical raster formats to your shapefile to even your Esri geodatabase can be put into QGIS. So that's pretty special. But you can also LiDAR. We'll talk about that later as well. Also, really great spatial data visualization of all kinds. You really don't want for anything when you're trying to use this program. Advanced geoprocessing tools and a geoprocessing window that you can search for these tools. And I think one of my favorite things about the program is the fact that you have plugins where you could add these plugins or these extensions onto the software that people from all around the world, the community, have developed for added functionality. So if you have a question that you can't readily get answered through some tools that you have readily available, I guarantee someone's thought of a plugin for that. So you might want to go and check that out, and we'll tell you how to navigate to that later. Okay, I'm going to let Randy talk a little bit more about the community real quick, because it is a very robust and fun community.
Yeah, it's a hello. It's a good group of people. They are, as the earlier slide, they are based out of Switzerland, and primarily communication happens through email lists. There's currently a move to, I believe it's Discourse, which is going to give you a little bit more of a modern feel, but great group of people. They have an international conference. I think this year it's in Bratislava. If you Google, you'll find it and all the stuff. Phos4G North America is happening in September in St. Louis. So we're going to try to have some kind of meeting for the US people there. And there are plenty of volunteer opportunities. You can help with language issues. It is a worldwide program, so not only English, everything else. In documentation, website, there's bug reporting, there's all kinds of stuff that you can do to help out, and it's a great group of people, super nice. So
thank you, Randy. And now I'm going to introduce Natalie to talk about the cool tricks that you can do, features that just make sense. Okay.
Hi, everybody. So this is kind of a fun part of the talk here where we just see what some cool features are in QGIS that are some of my favorites and the group's, both Randy and Stacy's favorites as well. So one of the tools that I really like in QGIS is the line density tool. I've used this to create this map over here, which is looking at movement corridors of persons living with HIV in Tennessee and beyond into the southeastern region. I really like how this tool runs in QGIS. I tried it in both QGIS and ArcGIS Pro, and ArcGIS Pro has like some sort of like phantom buffer that's usually on it that I don't know how to turn off. So usually if I'm looking at line density, I like to run it in QGIS, and you can create publication quality maps using QGIS. As I mentioned, this map here is created with QGIS and was published in a journal in AIDS last year. Layouts. I make a lot of maps for my job, and using layouts is one of the things that can either be make or break you sometimes. So QGIS is awesome because it has the ability to lock layers when you're making a layout. So you can basically have like multiple maps that are all drawing, so multiple map frames in a layout that are all drawing from one main map. And then you can just lock the layers and the styles of the layers, and you're not having to create like multiple map documents that you're pulling into a layout. It's just one map document that you can change the symbology, what layers are showing, and how they're symbolized, all kind of in one cohesive document and on the layout. So it's really cool. It's really easy to do. And I do a lot of my cartography work actually in QGIS because of this. It is also really easy to style stuff in the layout schema for QGIS. So it makes it really easy to change the colors of like the scale bar and the north arrow. Like you literally just click one place and then it changes it from black to white or gray or whatever. You can add customization really easily of like custom north arrows as SVG files. The legend interface is really nice because you can just like actually click into the different layers in your legend and like real time change what the name of them is in there without having to change the name of them in your map. which is great. And if you have ever made a map and had automated service credits at the bottom, no automated service credits on your map that you have to like then sort of get rid of by tricking the layout pane. So it makes it really easy. I really like doing large one-to-many joins in QGIS. It seems like it just works really well. And sometimes I struggle in other software platforms to get it to do a large join. And I'm talking like thousands, tens of thousands of records. I mostly do that in QGIS. And a little trick is if you are, actually Stacy taught me this, if you are doing a join and you don't want the joined fields to have the preface name of the field that you're joining it, or the layer you're joining it to, you can press this custom field name prefix box. And if you uncheck it, it'll just like put the names in there normally instead of affixing sort of a prefix to it of whatever that layer was. Another tool that I really like, this is just a baked in, these are all just baked in QGIS features right now, is the points to path tool. So great for visualizing movement over time and space. We've been using this to create life paths recently for refugees and looking at their journeys to America from various countries and how they've sort of ended up in Nashville. It's really simple interface, and you don't have to do like a destination origin layer. You can just have everything in one layer, and it's less for like sort of that business task and more just for doing points to path, which sometimes we just need to do without all of the kind of business interfacing. So anything that has a little green puzzle piece at the bottom is an extension for QGIS. So we've put in a couple of things that are extensions in here as well. One that I really like is the point sampling tool. You can really easily sample polygons and rasters at sort of a point in space and time. Great for terrain and suitability analysis, great for geo-enriching census data to address information. And it's great for like if you've got census data across multiple years that maybe the geometry is a little bit different, but you still just want to know like at that address, what was the information over, you know, the last 30 years, right? It makes it really, really simple. And basically the interface is just, you tell it what layer you want the points to come from, and then you tell it all of the layers and the attributes of that layer that you want it to sample. And then it just spits out like a huge cohesive attribute table, which is really nice. Back to the layouts, because I really like the layouts. When you are labeling stuff, you can just automatically move labels and scale them and like turn them, and you don't have to convert anything to annotation, which is great. So if you accidentally mess something up and you realize, oh, actually that was grid 2, not grid 1, you can just real-time edit it and like replace it without having to basically go back into your labels and then reconvert to annotation. Another extension, one that I think I run pretty ragged, is Quick OpenStreetMap. So it basically takes and runs an OpenStreetMap query directly in your project for you. We use this all the time for just querying like sort of basic data sets. One thing is like that we use it all the time for whatever reason, it seems like researchers at Vanderbilt really are interested in knowing where grocery stores are. I think I've had like 5 different requests for that over the past couple of years. So you can just run a quick query and say, show me all of the grocery stores and supermarkets in Nashville. You run it in real time, and then it extracts everything. And you can run it to extract based off a layer that you have, like the extent of a layer, a boundary layer, just whatever's in your map canvas, etc. So it's a really great tool to kind of start a data set. We use it a lot, like this is the starting place for this data set, and then we can continue to add to it and enrich it with more information from kind of this baseline. MMQGIS, free geocoding, guys. This is amazing. It's another extension. It's really awesome. You can use a bunch of different web services to run a geocode. You can also create GIFs in this, which is amazing, and do hub desire lines, and again, do more joining and modifying of attributes. So this one's a really awesome one to just check out and try, especially if you're looking for a free geocode. This is a great one, and we try to push our students to use this. so that they know like what a free resource would be to run a geocode. Routing. For whatever reason, recently routing has become a big part of my life. Wanting to know sort of like walkability regions or drivability regions. And there's a ton of different options for that in QGIS. There's 3 different extensions, one of them being travel time. And this is just an example of sort of what some of these different extensions look like and what sort of that area looks like compared to when I ran the routing in ArcGIS Pro. So you can see they're comparable, if not better, sometimes in other areas because QGIS is sort of developed all over the world. So a lot of the resources can be more targeted towards international. Virtual layers, SQL in QGIS. Randy, do you want to touch on this?
Yeah. So QGIS will do quite a bit, as Natalie's been pointing out. And one of the things, actually, I've been having a lot of fun with are virtual layers. So you can, you can create shape files, geo packages, all the stuff that we're going to talk about. One thing you can create is just and I can't remember what it was called, an art map. It's been a minute since I've had to touch the other platform, but you can run a data set and run SQL against it. And you do, in this case, I have a county that I'm doing 911 work in. They want to see all the fire hydrants. Excuse me, all the fire stations. You run a SQL command looking for a structure type, and you've got a brand new layer that's live that as you edit and work with, will edit and change, as you're working along. So it's a really great visualization tool into your data. That's it. And LiDAR. So because this is open source, it opens, there's a lot of ways you can enhance and use other pieces of software. So in this case, there was a crowdfunding campaign several years ago to get Poodle or PDAL, the Point Data Abstraction Library. Shout out to Howard, Hobu Inc. up in Iowa. And they integrated Poodle into this. So you can look at your LAZ files, your LAS files, and view them in 3D, take a look at the attribution, and start manipulating them in 336, the newest version of QGIS. They have a tool called Poodle Wrench. You can kind of do some analysis work and rip apart your LAZ files. So no extension needed, nothing else. Just work with it.
And then geoprocessing models, basically sort of the comparable product to Esri Model Builder. And Randy, you've been doing a lot of trainings on this recently, haven't you?
Yeah, I've actually I was building models this morning. So yeah, it's very similar to Model Builder. QGIS comes with about 500 processing tools, and you open Model Designer and you start dragging the tools in. It's very similar to the Esri package. I think a little bit, in some regards, it's better. In some, it's a little bit primitive, but it doesn't tend to break. Once you build a model, you're just running it and working with it, and it will really speed up your analysis and your data flow a lot.
Randy, can you put tools that are from plugins into the Model Builder?
Yes. So plugins, which are little extensions that come in to QGIS, will sometimes add processing tools into the processing tools panel. So if those tools are there, you have the ability to use them in the model, as well as Grass or Sega is another package. Any of these things that you get that are extendable into QGIS, you can use in the modeler. So it's very similar to just kind of, I guess, plugging, I don't know, Word into Adobe Acrobat, into Photoshop or Inkscape. You can just randomly take these tools and string them all together and do some pretty cool stuff with them.
And then just for fun, one thing I've been having a lot of fun with to kind of make things a little lighter during the day, and I've gotten almost everybody in my geospatial team doing this, is there's an extension, a plugin for QGIS called QGIS Hats, in which your little QGIS program will wear a hat, a seasonal hat. And so I think right now my QGIS is maybe wearing the pirate's hat. I don't know. But basically their motto is because people are not wearing enough hats. And so I think we could all use a little bit more fun in our day. And so I think that's kind of a fun little tidbit about QGIS that I really enjoy.
Okay, so we've shown you all this fun stuff that you can kind of think about what you can do with. Let's talk about how to get started and how to get the software. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you download and install the software, a little bit about the interface, how you add layers, and then something called the Coordinate Reference System, or the CRS, and I'll touch on the GeoPackage. So it's really simple. You just go to QGIS.org and you go to download. You can choose from Windows, you can choose from Linux, you can choose from Mac, the different installers. So one thing to point out here, this is what it would look like if you were downloading from Windows. You'll see a couple of different options, and you're going to see different installers that you're going to be able to look at. But these are it's nice that these are being released every 4 months, updates. So they're every 4 months you get a new release. But there isn't another stable release for change for 1 year. And by stable, I mean something that is just established, working, a long-term release. Okay, so if you're in government or academia, or you just enjoy not having to see things move around or change at all, then you're going to want to go for that long-term release. So you'll see that with the parentheses LTR. That'll be the one that you pick. You pick the one above it, you're getting the latest release. So that's just kind of good to know.
And sometimes if you get the newest release, like it might not be as free of bugs or like little kind of issues, whereas like the long-term release has been tested more, so it's a little bit more sustainable and reliable. But the newer releases, the non-long-term releases, have all of like the most cool updated features. So sometimes I'll download that because they'll say like, oh, this new thing has been added, like go play with it, and it's relevant to me, so I download that one. But usually sometimes stick to the long-term release.
Exactly. Yeah. In my lab, education lab here, we stick to the long-term release just because it's stable and students can continue to work. But the new release are always the most fun. Lay of the land. Okay, this is going to be your interface you're going to work with. If you've worked with another GIS package before, or Pro or whatever, it's going to look different, but the same kind of layout is going to happen. You're going to have your map view to where your content is going to be. So all your data layers are going to be. You're going to have your layer panel where you can move and work with your different individual layers, data layers. You're going to have a browser panel, and this it's kind of like similar to a catalog, but I find this just easier to work with in terms of being able to navigate and set my favorites folders, so I don't have to always keep digging around for things. And also you can add some other layers here that are already loaded in terms of like the OpenStreetMap base map. Tiles. And then you have your toolbars at the top. You can always extend these by adding more to them, but here's your default ones generally. And so that's just kind of the lay of your land. And then I'll talk about the CRS in a second. Quickly mention a plugin that I think is just kind of amazing that we have access to. Again, plugins are our extensions that we're going to add into it. And this is how you would go about adding a plugin or extension to QGIS here. You search for what your plugin is going to be, and then you select it, and then you install it. One of them is called Quick Map Services. And I use this one because it lets me have every base map that I can imagine, including Esri base maps. So I can get Google imagery, I can get all sorts of imagery in here. By adding this particular plugin will give me access to those different base maps. And it's kind of mind-blowing how many you get. Randy, do you want to talk about some more favorite plugins?
Yeah, so plugins are like can turn into a giant rabbit hole. You can chase down plugins all day, and there's a hub site. I think it's hub.qgis.org, or there's several links from the main website over to the hub site. And these extensions or these plugins tend to be, they're all open source. They have to be open. They have to give the source code. They're checked by developers, and so there's a lot of fun ones. Stace was mentioning quick map services. You get a lot of base maps, from ESRI to Bing to Google. I think at one point they had Strava, and I don't know if that's in there anymore. Quick OSM, which we had mentioned earlier, downloading OpenStreetMap data. Data Plotly is kind of fun. You make really nice charts and graphs. And QGIS to web, you can make a leaflet or an open layers map fairly easily. Can't be too complicated, but again, you just download this, install it, and you too can make a web map. One of my other favorite ones is the Stack browser, and it lets you dig through Stack catalogs. So Microsoft has one. I'm trying to think who else. There's several here in the US. They're worldwide, actually. Microsoft is one of them. And you can download Sentinel data and Landsat data and SRTM data and LiDAR data. There's all kinds of stuff. And it makes it really easy to dig through. And once you find what you want, just download it and go. And there's a lot of plugins. So go up to the QGIS website, look through them. They have a list of what's most popular, a list of new ones, and just do some digging. That's the easiest way to find them. But those are kind of the fun ones to play around with.
And I'll mention another one that I really like. It's the remote sensing package, the SCP processing package, where you can download from earthexplorer.gov and then do your processing, do your NDVI, and do all of that you want to do remote sensing wise with your Landsat data directly in the program without having to go out and get it and bring it in. So it's just a little plug there.
Yeah, and there's also, which is something that's been coming up because I tend to talk a lot about QGIS. It's my daily driver. Mobile, can you go out in the field and collect data? Yes, you can. So there's two different packages. There's QField and there's Merging Maps. There's several more in the open source community, but these two are QGIS centric. And they both have a free component. They both have a commercial component. So just because it's open source doesn't mean there can't be a commercial end to this. And with both, you tend to develop a data set, publish it through the respective plugin. Both of these are plugins, QField, Merge, and Map, and then it tends to go to your phone. Go out, or tablet, or whatever you have for data collection. You go out and collect data, sync it back, and it works really well. A little bit different than what you're used to, but once you work with it for a little bit, it's actually, both packages are really great. I tend to use Merge and Maps more, but either one will work. So you can go out and do field data collection and, enjoy life.
And you can connect your GPS receivers, so like your MLED device or your Bad Elf or your Trimble, into these apps directly and take points or update points or move points. So it's very similar kind of interface for if you have an external GPS or even an internal like phone or tablet GPS.
I'll just hit on this one feature. So we're familiar maybe possibly with the ARC world of the geodatabase, but the geo package is the special package that you could use in QGIS. So we've got the shape file, we've got raster imagery, but this allows you to store different types of spatial data types in one little package. So it's really nice and compact, and it's a great way to share your data with others if you're collaborating on data, instead of having you lose your links to your data or having to refine and reload your data. It's a nice way to tidy up and organize your spatial data, and it helps with your file size as well. So this is just one thing I wanted to point out, that it does have a geo package, but you can load Esri geodatabases in QGIS as well. So that's kind of a nice thing. I just wanted to point that this was a feature. Also, we have, we can't get away from projections and coordinate systems as much as sometimes we might want to. But we have coordinate reference system in QGIS here. You can project on the fly, which means you load a data set and it will go to what is currently your map coordinate reference system. Just remember though, that that's not permanent. You have to define that or reproject that data set to make it fit that going forward. It just is on the fly, so it's just projected that way. At the bottom here, you'll see where you can see what your coordinate reference system is, or CRS. We often look at it as EPSG, which is a code. There's a great website, epsg.io, that gives you all the codes for all your locale across the world, okay? And so it's a great way to grab that. And once you start learning your numbers, you kind of know which numbers you want. But this means that you can have what your projection is, what the coordinate system is, and what the datum is. And those are important choices when you're going forward, making about your research and what you want to achieve. Also, if you want your data layers to be in the same place. So it's really handy when you go to project your coordinate system up in the top here. You can see where you can either enter in the code or you can search for the particular projection that you're interested in. And then it will do that transformation at the bottom to then transform it. So it's important to think about this as you're starting to work with a GIS program, or especially in QGIS, how to work with coordinate reference systems. And there's a lot of documentation out there that can kind of help you choose which one is for you.
Cool. And finally, layouts. You can make a map. That's kind of the whole kicker to this whole thing. For a lot of us, you want a PDF or you want something to do, and that's one of the things that QGIS has done. Probably to harken back to those of us that are old, ArcView 3, if you remember back then, you could have multiple layouts per project, and with ArcMap it was only one, and then I think with Pro maybe it's back to multiple. QGIS has always been multiple, and it's really fun laying out a map, which Natalie's mentioned, Stacy's mentioned all this, but it's just it makes map making fun again. I tend to not yell as much when digging through the layouts. So all this, all the stuff we do, and we end up here making a map.
So I just threw up here at the end, we're going to do a brief demo here. Randy's going to show us a demo, but this is our contact information if you want to get a hold of us at all.
Cool.
And then quickly before we jump into the demo, I just want to do a plug. If there's any folks out here that live in Tennessee, Randy, myself, and Stacy are all on the board for TNGIC, which is our state user group for GIS. Stands for Tennessee Geographic Information Council. I feel like we've started to kind of build an open source community inside of TNGIC. We had a really great session just dedicated to open source at our last annual meeting. So if you're in Tennessee or close to Tennessee and you want to find out what's going on around Tennessee and what people are doing with GIS, please come to our annual meeting, which is always in April, or one of our fall forums, which are free to attend. The dates are listed here. And then you can scan the QR code just to check out tngic.org and find out more information. Randy, I'll send it over to you.
Okay. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen. So yeah. And as I get this ready, it is kind of fun. I mean, if you're part of a larger community of GIS people, just dragging open source into the mix, it's a good skill to know. Not the world doesn't just revolve around one vendor, but tends to get most of the press. So here's your 10-minute demo, maybe 9 minutes. I might be able to do this quicker. We were mentioning the long-term release. So I'm running Linux. I'm not running Windows. I'm the weird oddball. It's kind of fun. This is the long-term release, which is 334 Prizren. These releases all get names after the last developer meeting. One thing we didn't mention, and it's just kind of an oddball thing that you can do, let me scoot this window out of the way. You can run QGIS and Conda. Because I'm on Linux, I can only really run one at a time without some kind of special, magic. But with Conda, the Anaconda software, I can actually run 336, which is the current release. It's the all the new features. So we're going to play with 336 in Conda. Once it's in Conda, you have access to Jupyter notebooks and all the other stuff that you can pull it in. I'm going to build actually just a brand new profile. I'm going to call it URISA because we're going to install plugins. We're going to do everything we can humanly do in 9 minutes, just so you guys see. So if you were to do a brand new install, it would look just like this. I'm going to bump some stuff around because I want the browser on this side. I want my processing tools on this side. And I'm just going to move kind of quickly. When you open it up, you get news, all this different stuff. And I'm going to drag some data in. And I have data of Chattanooga. I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which if you're looking at the map, southern US, go to Tennessee, and I'm in the corner. And I'm just going to pull in, the city limits. And I just dragged and dropped these in. To make this a little bit easier, I am going to go into my browser panel and go to my data folder. And I tend to have stuff buried pretty deep. I'm going to add this as a favorite. And that gives me a shortcut now. So I can go in here and add buildings in. There we go. And so I grabbed all this data from Chattanooga's open data portal. It just makes it really, really easy, to go out and grab stuff. And I'm going to drag KML files into here, drop these in, and there we go. I'm actually going to change the projection. So all my data is in 4326. I'm going to move this over to 2274. Which is a Tennessee state plane projection, just to give it a little bit of a more normal look, or what I'm used to seeing and stuff in Tennessee state plane. And it's really not that hard to start building stuff. I'm going to jump into the symbology panel and symbolize city limits. We're going to make this transparent. I want to make this dashed. And I've been trying to keep up too with the comments in the chat. And so I'm going to cover a few things as we're doing this. If you notice, as I'm changing the symbology in the data panel, it tends to be a live overview or a live link in. I'm going to install some plugins. You can kind of see, maybe you sort of see there's something going on here in the middle of Chattanooga. Maybe there's a river or something going on. Let's take a look. Let's grab some plugins. I saw there was a question, how hard are plugins to install? They are this hard. Map services. And grab that. Install. And there we go. Sometimes a plugin will require you to restart QGIS. In this case, no. I'm going to add in the extra settings for Quick Map, get the contributed pack. All these plugins tend to have a website or some other bit of information. I just tend to use this one a lot, so I already know what to do. I'm going to save this. And so now when I click, I could pull in Bing aerial imagery. So let's look at the Bing satellite layer. And there's the river. You ever come to Chattanooga? There's the aquarium. If I were to turn the buildings off a little bit, I'm going to add streets in. Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to go back to the browser and do that. I was getting ready to drag and drop stuff in. Streets. And I want this to look a little bit better. I don't know, maybe a 0.7. There we go. What's also interesting about my data, it's also very dated right now. The open data portal doesn't have the new interstate, all the new shenanigans going on here on the interstate. So if you come to town, beware of a lot of construction. And to go in here and look at, let's see, it also comes with some stuff preloaded, so I could drag OpenStreetMap into here, OpenStreetMap and the maps in global terrain come preloaded. I'm going to drag and drop OpenStreetMap in as a base map. You can't edit. I was watching the user list the other day and somebody said, can you edit OpenStreetMap data? You can once it's downloaded, but you can't re-upload it. But it is really nice with Quick OSM. If I were to grab that, and download, and there we go. And as I'm adding stuff in, and hopefully this isn't too small on my screen, I don't have anything magnification running, but if in the processing toolbox, tools tend to start opening up. As you add plugins, you get more tools in the toolbox. I've just had a brand new set here with Quick OSM. Very, very quickly, I'm going to do two things and we're getting a LiDAR. One, this is an Esri file geodatabase. So I'm going to drag in let's see, does that get me the river? That does not get me the river. It's NHD area. So this is National Hydro Dataset data. I'm going to run a quick tool, clip, and if clip will open up, there we go. Clicked on it way too much. I'm going to clip NHD area with city limits and run. And that was a pretty quick clip. But now I have actually the river following the city boundary. If I turn off OpenStreetMap, if I want to turn this clipped line blue, and as I'm driving along doing this, I'm actually driving my way towards a map or being able to make something a little bit more representative of, what we're expecting, downtown Chattanooga to look like. So there we go. So adding data in, I've added in shapefiles, KML, and an Esri file geodatabase. If I did want this NHD water body did come from the Esri file geodatabase, I can edit that and start working with it. That's kind of a brand new thing with 334 that you can edit Esri file geodatabases. And, so it's really no longer a problem. You can create them and edit them. So with GeoPackage, shapefile, Esri file geodatabase, you can pass this data back and forth to your other colleagues that may be married to using ArcPro or ArcMap or whatever. I think ArcMap's been sunsetted now. So ArcPro it is. Now, let's start up a brand new session. And I'm not watching the chat, so if anything major comes up, somebody yell at me. Close without saving. And very, very quickly, I am going to find the LiDAR data. So you would think I would have all of this. I got a lot of data on my computer. Here we go. LAZ files. So Tennessee has an extensive amount of LiDAR, and because they partner with the USGS 3DEP program, it's able to be passed around. This is LiDAR. As you can tell, it's listed out by its classification. If you know nothing else about LiDAR, I'm not an expert, at least you can check it and go, hey, we have buildings, ground, other stuff. If I want to view this in 3D, actually, let me resymbolize it. And I'm almost out of time. We're going to do this by elevation. We're going to do this by Z. And I'm going to screw that up because I didn't pick There we go. And here we are. So LiDAR data. We're going to look at this in 3D very, very quickly. No extension needed, no licensing needed, nothing really that exciting. I am going to turn on shadowing. I'm going to turn on dome lighting and turn on ambient. And there you are. You can view your LiDAR data and at least take a look at it. Building extensive models and doing things that you can add 3D models into QGIS. That's still a little bit outside of what the core use of QGIS, but to be able to look at this in 3D is really, really nice. And to be able to, again, take this data, and I know I'm running out of time. Where's that? Running an elevation profile of the data across here. And then I make this like, I don't know, 50 feet wide. You have an elevation profile now. And so LiDAR is one of those interesting things. I don't use it a lot. Starting to use it a little bit more in consulting work. My clients tend to not be very LiDAR proficient, but there you are. That's kind of the demo. I mean, that's quick. I know that was only like 10 or 15 minutes, but at least gives you a taste of what QGIS can do. Download it, participate. Join the email list, ask questions, volunteer, donate money. QGIS runs off like a 250,000 euro a year budget. That's it. They do a lot of amazing work to give you this free tool. So with that, questions, angst, anger, I will unshare my screen. And I don't know where we go from here.
Well, amazing job to our presenters, and Natalie has been a beast in the chat taking all of these questions already. But there was one question that she answered that I just wanted to make sure the link got put into the chat to some training materials. The question was asking, is it easy to learn QGIS? Is it easy to get going? And Natalie shared this link to some training resources that I thought everyone should know about. Panelists is very, yeah, go ahead.
And if you want more training, Natalie and I do, and Randy do a lot of training. So if you are really interested, just reach out to one of us and we'd be happy to share some of the tutorials and things that we've created that work well for us.
Yeah, there's also a lot of like really good books out there, similar
Yeah.
to like, I think I learned ArcMap on like the Getting to Know ArcMap, like thick book. There's equivalents of that for QGIS and they're pretty affordable as well. And you may even be able to like purchase or access them through your local libraries.
Yeah, and Kurt Menke, he's one of the members of the community. He's written Discover QGIS. There's several things. The QGIS documentation also contains tutorials. So you can walk through those. They tend to be a bit dry, but they're usable. So, and there's a lot of information out there on doing it. Those of you using ArcMap, come on, switch over. I saw one comment in there. So yeah, I got a gentleman from Colombia, I believe, or gentle person from Colombia. Come on, man. Come on over. The weather's great on this side.
And I'm still using ArcMap as well. I just had to expose myself there.
Yeah, come on over. The weather's great here. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and that was a fantastic demo, Randy. So there was a question if the presenters could share their contact information. I know we had that slide up, but if we could put it in the chat, I think that would be helpful as well. All right. Is there any other questions from the audience? Please feel free to put them into the Q&A or put them into the chat. We still have a couple minutes left. So Benjamin asks, why is the industry dominated by Esri? Maybe that's a hot topic.
They got a lot of paid salespeople. We are your salespeople for QGIS. It's Esri came out. If you look at the origins of open source, you're looking at 77, 78 with different programs. GRASS came out in like 83. The first ARC license was in 81 or 82. So, they're a commercial firm. So it's in their best interest to sell a lot of software. We tend to want you to have fun and use some good software and learn a lot. Work with the community. We're more of a community thing than, a commercial entity. So.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Randy. Just as there's an Esri community, there's this open source community that's out there. They have conferences, they have webinars just like this one you're at here. So if you're curious and want to join up, feel free to look into that. And Natalie, did you have
I
something
was
to add?
just gonna say, I started using QGIS because I saw Randy give a talk at Tinjik like 6 or 7 years ago now. And I have a Mac as my personal computer. And I was like, oh, it would be great to do like make maps for fun at home. And so I downloaded QGIS and just started playing around to just like map things that I was interested in. And so it's fun, especially for the Mac users out there. I think that's one area where it really thrives is like I can run it natively on my Mac and I don't have to run Parallels or Boot Camp. And it works really good. It's pretty light, as you just saw Randy do all of that stuff live. It works pretty good.
And I'll just say, I got into it because I was a poor graduate student doing a dissertation and could not afford any Esri products. And I was like, well, let me try this. And then that was it. I was sold.
Yeah, I do Stanley Stacy or Vanderbilt. I consult, and for me, I just use it because I think it's better. It started out as a thing where I was using it side by side with my Esri stuff. And then as, time went on, there's probably now like a 90% overlap with what the ability with Pro and with QGIS. So I think it's more fun because you can email the developers and talk to them and go, hey, I've got a problem. Can you guys help me out? And they will gleefully email you. Now, it may be midnight, my time, but they're going to send me an email and talk to me about it. So it's kind of nice.
We have a question here. Is there a place that they could learn more about QGIS and other open source options? Maybe one or two resources you all might recommend?
It's a good question. I would go to the QGIS website, look up stuff there. There's a number of tutorials and everything that are linked from up there. A simple Google search will take you to, oh man, there's a ton of stuff up there. There's a lot of videos. If you're in the US, come to Phosphor GNA. There's several workshops that were posted from the Phosphor GNA virtual workshop several years ago that are up there. But yeah, there's a ton of information. But yeah, go to the QGIS website, join the email list, ask questions.
All right, we have another question here. Could you give a brief explanation of open source enterprise environments, or are any of you familiar with enterprise environments using open source?
I guess it would depend on what you would call enterprise. Well, there's a good chunk of the military, Red Cross, oh man, EPA, USGS, open source is all through all the US federal agencies. Trying to think who all's using it. I mean, it's just about everybody's using it. Even if you're using your ESRI software, you're using open source. You may not realize it, but the raster engine built into Arc Pro is the same raster engine built into QGIS. It's GDAL or Goodle. So Esri does use a lot of open source, so it's everywhere. Everybody's using it, and yeah, I don't really have any specifics on that, but it's doable.
I think related to that question, there's another question that asks about employers being hung up on candidates having experience with Esri, and maybe worried that if they learn these open source tools, that it might not seem transferable.
I would say, at least recently, a lot of jobs that I've seen have said that they're interested in people who have GIS skills with both. I've seen the word QGIS in like 5 or 6 job openings recently, where it says like would love experience with open source tools, i.e. QGIS, other things like that. It seems like it's becoming maybe a little bit more prevalent. And it kind of just depends on your organization. I guess I would say to that, myself and Stacy, I think both use both platforms. It's kind of like one of those where whatever works best at that moment is what I use. If I'm making a map, I'm almost always doing it in QGIS, but sometimes I'm doing other stuff in ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Online. So I think having skills that sort of cross the gamut of open source and proprietary software is a really good thing to make yourself more marketable. And then you could go into a position and maybe say, hey, what about using QGIS for this? And start to kind of try to push for that. I'm lucky that at Vanderbilt, we're really, excited about open source technologies, and my boss uses them a lot. And so he's been really receptive to it. But I know that's not always the case, but I would say, a lot of positions are more open to it now. I've been kind of surprised to see that, but they're actually listing QGIS as a skill that they want people to have.
And I'll just say real quick from a lecturer, professor standpoint, I teach only in QGIS. So I teach my whole curriculum in QGIS, because once you learn QGIS, learning ArcPro, learning Esri, you're going to be fine. So having students have something that they can access, and a lot of places do not have access to Esri after they graduate. They then would have to, learn. So learning QGIS now is making them more marketable, actually, when they graduate.
Yeah, that's to me, that's been kind of the fun, well, not necessarily funny thing, but one of the weird things to talk to a lot of students, you tend to get a lot of pro Esri talking points. That's fine. I mean, I give them a hard time because I can, but if you learn the open source tools, you're going to have these tool sets as soon as you leave college. They're not going to go away. The skill set you learn is not going to go away. It's kind of, as I tell people, it's like being a carpenter or a plumber, and you're only proficient with one very specific tool set, and then suddenly you're thrust out in the real world where possibly you need a lot of tool sets. And in my case, I really need to use ArcPro more, and I don't use it that much. Actually, I haven't touched it in 3 years. And I feel like that's probably not helping me out a lot. As a consultant, I probably need to touch it more, but that's one of those things.
All right, we have just a few minutes. We'll take one more question. It's come up twice now, basically wondering what is the best alternative to these ArcGIS Online interactive maps in open source?
Ooh, that's a really good question. ArcGIS Online has been one of those weird things that I've been trying to wrap my head around. And it's probably gonna be more with Stacy, Natalie. You guys have probably you've dealt with this more than I have, but there are different tools. Making a tool that easy. ArcGIS Online is pretty easy. You can publish through QGIS to use that QGIS web plugin to GitHub and make a lot of just very specific maps that you can work through. There is Map Server is a little bit obtuse. It's a little bit hard to use. There's a Map Store through the GeoServer group, and it does a pretty good job of distributing and building maps. There's Node, I think, no, GeoNode. GeoNode's another one. I think are you guys using that at Vanderbilt, or you've tried to use it?
We're still in the we're still learning our way around it. We need to get up the GeoServer first, and then we can go to GeoNode. But the GeoNode, you can do things like a hub site and things like that you would do in the online world for Esri. You can do that with using a combination of a few steps you have to get through that are not on online. But we're looking forward to trying that out in the future.
Yeah, we were in a training class, or I was in a training class a couple months ago at Tennessee, and we had one gentleman get very frustrated. And he's like, "This is nothing like Esri," and he just got up and left. We were in a grass training thing, and that's the point. It is nothing like it because it's a different way of thinking, a different thought process. So, tend to be a little bit more open-minded on this end. There aren't necessarily. I had one person get very mad at me. There was not a ArcGIS Online. There wasn't a QGIS Online. I'm like, well, It's not a, it's a community of people, not a company, you know, selling software. So there's probably ways to do it, to dig through this and I mean, there's different ways to publish web maps, not just through ArcGIS Online, but you're gonna have to get your fingers a little bit dirty doing it. But it's a good skill set to have, so it won't be time wasted.
All right, and with that, we are at our time. So thank you again to our panelists. That was a fascinating webinar, and feel free to contact them. They put their emails into the chat. I hope everyone enjoyed this webinar, QGIS, just the basics, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Cool.